at home, our family members, our friends, those whom we're connecting on a daily basis at work, at school, wherever we may be, asking that this moment may be a point of light to each one of us so that we can be a light for others, so that we can help, guide, and protect whenever possible. This way, dear Lord, we ask that you guide each one of us today and always, and so be it. Welcome, everyone. And we would like to give continuation to this work of the let us call study of the parables, right? And even though we have touched on some of the parables already, we started this work last year. No matter how many times we read it again and we study again, we will find new things, right? We will be able to apply in our lives in different ways. And today, giving continuation to this work that we started, we will be talking about the parable of the lamp under a bushel. This is a picture that, as many of you seen on other presentations as well, I like to bring the art as well, because there's so much art depicting these parables, right? And it also it allows us to understand a little bit the how we see the parables, right? And the visual is important for all of us. The visual is important for all of us. Again, so this is a painting by Johann Weigel in 1695, and as you can see here, it's pretty busy. But we're going to take a moment to um, even study the picture a little bit, right? But there is a purpose. There is a purpose behind it. I kept the word bushel just so we can dismissify a little bit the idea of what a bushel is, right? We use the word in English, on contemporary English, right? For us, a bushel of crabs, right? And when you go buy crabs, it's what we use, right? I don't know if you ever heard of it. Nowadays, it's pretty expensive, even though we are in Maryland, the state of the crabs, right? But it's still pretty expensive. But it's a basket. It's a basket. If we want to be precise, it is exactly 64 U.S. pints or 35.2 liters in terms of volume, right? Imagine if you have a container that you can put that much inside. Now, if we go to other parts of the world, in UK is something else. But I'm just gonna stop right here. Think of it as a basket. So yeah, whenever you see the light under a bushel, it's a basket. It's a basket that was used at the time to also to sell or to maintain grains, maintain fruits, whatever at the time they needed to do so. But we can translate this into a, I don't know, a container or something, right? We're gonna see in the different words that are used throughout time, because of the word, since the word has different meanings, different Bible versions, they use different words as well. But the final thing I would like to say about the bushel is that this is actually what we find, which I don't have here, in the Gospel according to Spiritism on chapter 24. The chapter is entitled "The Lamp Under a Bushel." Right? Do not hide the lamp under a bushel. So, in terms of the parable is found in three Gospels. Right? The Gospel of Mark, chapter 4, verses 21 to 25. Luke 8, 16 through 18, and then in Matthew chapter 5, verse 13 through 16. Curiosity here that the first two, Mark and Luke, right, they are the actual parable only. When we go to Matthew, then we're going to see that is a continuation of the Sermon of the Mount. Then Jesus comes back and touches back again on the idea that do not hide your light under a bushel, right? And two other elements that I would like to bring here that I learned with this is that in both gospel, of Luke and Mark, the parable is preceded by the parable of the sower. And in the Gospel of Mark, the parable of the growing seed follows the parable of the lamp under a bushel. Why? It's a curiosity, but just something that we will connect. And I think we're looking at it right now. I am certain that we're looking at it right now. Look at the picture. What do you see on the picture? We see the actual lamp under the bushel, right? We see the lamp on top of it, the light on top of it. Thank you, Jeanette. And we see the men sowing in the back, right? And we see right here the growing seed, that this beautiful tree. So we see on this picture three parables. It's really interesting, right? Even though on top, and forgive me, I could not. The only thing I can make of this on the bottom of the picture there, I see Mark chapter 4. That's it. Verse 21. And then on top again, it says Parabola Christi di Lucerna Grano Finapis. And I try to again translate this, but it was very hard. So we're not going to focus on there. Sorry if that is a distraction, but I wanted just to make sure that we see here and we put a picture in our heads of what that is. And you can see that on the actual picture right here, that is a basket. That's the basket that we were talking about, right? The little basket and the light is right here, right? And then the tree, and then the man sowing in the back, right? Now, the lamp under a bushel is also mentioned in Matthew, as I mentioned to you, but it's more direct in terms of when Jesus is actually talking about the salt of the earth and the light of the earth. We're going to get there, and we're going to stress a little bit onto that idea also, because all the Mark and Luke, they're pretty similar, and we're going to read together. But I think when we get to the point when we go to that part of the last parts of the Sermon of the Mount, it's Jesus telling us we are light, and that's one of the emphasis that we want to. If anything today, when we get out of this room today, we will know that we are light, right? I want to just take a step back, which is I should have done at the beginning, and it's a simple question. Have we ever thought about why right now we have lights over us and not under the chairs? You don't have to answer. It's pretty obvious, right? It's extremely obvious. It would be really cool to have lights under the chair, right? That futuristic, contemporary look, right? Sometimes we like to put lights everywhere, but there is a purpose why we have light over our heads, not on the ground. Unless if you wanted to follow, right, inside of the airplane, you have the little light that, when it's dark, but still the movies, there is a purpose. There is a reason why. And I think that is also the key element for us here to study. But we'll go back to that. So, just this is a little bit bigger. You get the picture. The lamp, I'm going to try to use the cursor so they can see online as well. The lamp down here, and this is the actual basket that we were talking about, the bushel. And it's quite similar as well if we actually look at the bushel when we were buying a bushel of crabs, right? It's a little bit taller, skinnier, but that's what it is right there. And then you can see it's not doing much, not doing anything, right? But with the light that is up here is actually illuminating this little table over here, right? And then the growing seed that we talked about, and then the other parable, the parable of the growing seed, right? That is beautiful, as well as the sowing, the parable of the sowing, right? Sowing men. So let us take back, as we were saying, to visit the actual passages of the Bible. It's not a Bible study. Please don't think that we're here to study the Bible, but to really interpret under the light of Spiritism and with some other help as well, what these parables really means to us. And so we can also contextualize, right, and bring it to our daily lives. Mark 4, 21 through 25. It says, he said to them, do you bring in a lamp to put it under a bowl or a bed? Instead, don't you put it on its stand? For whatever is hidden is meant to be disclosed, and whatever is concealed is meant to be brought out into the open. If anyone has ears to hear, let them hear. Consider carefully what you hear, he continued. With the measure you use it, it will be measured to you. And even more, whoever has will be given, whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. Very little variation from Mark to Luke. Luke 8, chapter 16 through 18. I'm sorry, verses 16 through 18. No one lights a lamp and hides it in a clay jar or puts it under a bed. Instead, they put it on a stand so that those who come in can see the light. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Therefore, consider carefully how you listen. Whoever has will be given more. Whoever does not have, even what they think they have, will be taken from them. So, as you can see, very little variation. Comparing these two gospels, this passage under these two gospels. But as we mentioned, the teachings is very interesting because it brings one the sowing man is brought into light, right? Where let's bring this parable here, and then the light under the bushel, and then in one of the gospels, it is also brought that seed that truly grow, right? That is put on the earth, and it grows, right? And obviously bear fruits. We're not going to go into dive into that. So the last part that we want to bring is obviously the last mentioning. Even though we're not going to dive much into the salt part, it's I think it's worth it to bring it to us in terms of its value, and it can be found on Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16, and it says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot." Have we ever tried to eat food without salt? It's lame, isn't it? I have a friend right now who is battling a tough condition, physical condition, that was abusing salt. And now she wants some salt. And guess what? It's not happening. And the person complains, right? I don't want to eat. And it's good. Well, you ate all the salt that there was out there. Now you cannot, because the body is not able to support anymore. However, when you use for the right dosage and whatnot, it gives taste, right? It brings all the flavors together, right? And it is important for us to remember this as well. And then Jesus continues to say, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." We could stop right here and go home, because that's supposed to be enough for us to, number one, to feel good about ourselves. Number two is to feel good about our Creator, right? Because there is a purpose for us to be light, right? But there is also a purpose beyond of us being light, right? And this is not just somebody on the street that is telling us. This is Jesus telling us through that beautiful Sermon of the Mount, right? Towards the end, as he's finalizing. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. I want to just make sure that we get this whole gist of things. Where is it? Where we can find it, right? And if you'd like me to share this, please let me know. But Jesus talked about this idea of light in several occasions, not only telling us that we are light, because if he's saying Don't put the light under a bushel, right? Don't put the light underneath anything, right? He's referring to what? Our light, what we have thus far. Yes, some people have more light than we have, but we are light, right? It's so the point that I'm trying to make is that it's undeniable. Three times. Actually, there is one more time, but it's not really the parable, and it's also in Luke. I think Luke 30, chapter 31, but it's not the actual parable. There is another mention in terms of light, right? But we can see there here it's pretty straight to the point. Do not put the light under a bushel. So we are light. And the last one, he refers to we. We are the light. You are the light of the world. So if Jesus is saying, right, it's like, okay, he's really point out to him. Now, I want to make another point on this. He also mentions of himself as the light, right? The light. Now we want to say the actual light, right? He says in three passages of the Bible, it says the following. When Jesus spoke again to the people, he said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And again, John 8, chapter 12, and John 9, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. And in John 12 again, I have come into the world as a light, so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness. So, him mentioning of himself as being the light, we don't want to bolster here and say, okay, we follow Jesus, Jesus is the light, but let's bring some reason towards this. We have the confirmation by the Spirit's book, by the Spirits in the Spirit's book, on question 625, when it was asked, what is the most perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a guide and model? And we know it's Jesus. That is our guide and model, right? And why? Are we just following someone because the church over the years told us we must follow Christ? We must follow the master. No, there's reason now, right? And why is it? On question 886, what is the true meaning of the word charity as Jesus understood? And I want to add to this a little bit, but let's go through the answer. Benevolence towards everyone, indulgence towards the imperfection of others, and forgiveness for offenses. Here's the Jesus that I would like to propose to each one of us tonight, that is saying, you are the light. Someone who came to us and not only told us these beautiful things, but exemplify it. I was actually reading, today, before I came here, reading the Happy Life, and Joanna D'Angelo in one of its chapters, one of the chapters of the Happy Life, she tells us to stop, right, and read a passage of a good book at least once a day. And most of us do that, right? When we're reading, when we're preparing, or at least praying, as Dione read about the prayer earlier today as well, that Joanna D'Angelo said. And isn't it what happens when we read a passage of the gospel? And she goes on to say that it would avoid countless problems, right? That if we were to stop and read, we would think twice before we did something wrong. That is the Jesus that brings that gospel, that living gospel, that throughout 2,000 years is still with us. And we're still persisting, right? Yes, there are other religions. There are other ideas that we should follow, that we should also analyze, right? Joanna D'Angelo and other authors as well have mentioned about it. But this is the Christ that it is inviting, that I'm inviting you to look at and say, benevolence towards everyone, indulgence towards the imperfection of others, and forgiveness for offenses, well exemplified, well taught to all of us, and still we don't get it. Much like we still don't get it that we are light. And no matter how many times I say it here, right, and I'm saying this to myself as well, it's hard to understand this. We are light? Really? Yes, we are. Yes, we are. So This is the idea behind it. Not the Jesus that, we think that, oh, this and, that we have lived throughout and that we have denied as well in many ways, right? So we are the light of the world. And we have to figure this out. How am I the light of the world? Let's look a little bit more, and hopefully we can understand a little bit better. So, what is this light? What do you think this light is? If you had to ask yourself, what is this light that we should not put under the bushel? It's a rhetorical question. We will have a moment at the end of our conversation today to answer or to add to it, hopefully. But what is this light? What do you think it is? Especially when Jesus, this high elevated, morally speaking, spirit is telling us that we are the light. Right? What is it? A guide for others. Louise was saying it's a guide for us. I agree, right? But how do we fit that in our lives? Do we feel that way, that we're a guide for others? A light for a daughter, for a family member? Great. So each one of us, we have our light. Each one of us, we have a way to shine this light onto someone else. Each one of us will have a friend who has a light that can shine on someone else, right? But let us, by the way, that is, let's take a look at it. And that is, I don't know, it's hard to see there, the little lamp right over here. I just want to, and that is a basket over there, a picture of a basket. Just for us to bring this idea of a lamp, when we look at a lamp, it's very easy, right? It's well, maybe not. Let me actually break it down a little bit, especially for the younger ones. When we look at a lamp, we have the cord, the little thing that actually is on fire. Whatever fuel is there, right? At the time of Jesus, many of the times these were this was actually with oil, regular oil, olive oil, right? And you would light it up, and then the oil would just burn. But before we can light the actual lamp, what do we need to do? We need to actually create fire. Did they have matches back then? No. How do they create the fire? Attrition, right? They had to have a stone. They have to have, that would rub on one another and then put the fire. They would actually have to rub, one piece of wood on the other, and that was all the attrition. It's a lot of work, right? And when we are thinking about that we are light, guess what? For us to light up, sometimes needs what? Work, attrition, sweat, right? And then these are just things that we can carry with us in our hearts. And then I'm not saying this that I figured this out by myself. No, with studying and thinking about it, listening and reading other authors as well. But once you have the fire, what do you need to do? You keep it. And then I was thinking, is that why it was put under the bushel so the fire wouldn't blow? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe. But the point was made. That's not to, if you want to light up, if you want the actual purpose of the light, right, to which is to light up the room, you don't want to put on the bush. You want to put somewhere high. But if you think about it, once you have the fire, guess what? You have to maintain the fire. You don't want to let the lamp, the oil inside of the lamp just run out. It needs work. It needs work. And Emmanuel, on chapter 81 of this beautiful book, Living Spring, he says the following. Now he gets into the meat and potato of what a lamp is in our world today. It says, without the sacrifice of energy or oil, there is no light. For us here, the material for our maintenance is the potential, the resource, the life. Our existence is the living lamp. Our existence today is our living lamp. The attractions that we have with one another, right? That perhaps it will get, you get the heat, you get that heated moment, but the outcomes afterwards is incontestable. It's going to light up the life of others. When we look back of what our ancestors did for us, a lot of attraction, a lot of work, a lot of oil was burned, right? To light up what we have nowadays. As I like to believe, a much easier life. And I cannot say for others, for some of us, we may see life in a different way. But one thing that I would like to say is that it's much easier than our parents, our grandparents went through, great grandparents, right? They didn't even have this on the ceiling, right? And nowadays we're talking about a lamp here. It's something so archaic, right? However, it's still do the work. If we were to think about nowadays to generate this electricity here, somebody's working, right? The power plants that we have nowadays to generate the energy that is being consumed for us to be here. And sometimes we go to certain places, we do certain things, and we don't pay attention to these things. We don't even pay attention to the energy that we are burning. To get up in the morning today, prepare our days. Some of us have to go to work, whatever we have to do at home. And then to come here, guess what? We're burning fuel. So let this moment and let every moment of our lives be a moment, right? Because we're burning fuel, we're burning energy. And one thing that I would like to add here is the element of time that doesn't come back. We're burning time. It doesn't come back. Tomorrow is not going to be Saturday anymore of 27th of April, forgot. Right? It's going to be the 28th. We may see the 27th of April, but it's going to be 2025, not 2024 anymore. And that time won't come back. And I know it's sometimes that, we if we get into that idea, it's like, oh my God, yeah. So, but we will have other Thursdays, other Saturdays, we'll have other Aprils, right? We have other years, and we will continue on. But let us utilize the time that we have the best way possible. This is another, just before we get into the next step here that we'd like to present. This is a painting by Hans Stigler. It is actually Martin Luther. Actually, it's depicting Martin Luther actually taking the bushel off the lamp, and this is really painting towards what happened back in the church that was perhaps doing things that it was hiding this light, the light of the gospel for all of us, right? But we're not going to get into that. But I thought that it was really interesting as well that many of these artists they bring these to light, because back in the day, folks, there was no cell phone, there was no photograph, right? So they have to paint it, and it's really, the artistic part is really interesting. But here's my whys to each one of us, right? Even to myself. Why do we hide ourselves? Why do we hide others? Why do we abuse the light of others? Why do we steal the shining light of others? Why many times we put ourselves down, and even before we start a battle, right? Before we even get to light ourselves up, right? With the attraction that we need in every single day, we say, no, this is not for me. Why? Another rhetorical question, because each one of us will have our own answers. And if you think that you're explaining to yourself, I can almost guarantee that we're defining ourselves again, right? We're saying, we're lying to ourselves saying, this is not for me because we also have inside of us, as the example that Aloysio gave it to us, that there were moments since he utilized the example of being a father, being a light for a daughter, that he was pushed to the limit to be a father, to be a good person, right? So think about it. Why can we do in other ways? Why can we do with the sons and daughters of others? Why can we do towards the brothers and sisters that we have that also create attraction with us, that are difficult. So let us think about these things. And sometimes, right, it's the pride that we have inside of us, right? It's the different issues that we have inside of us that stops us from lighting up this light. Or sometimes we already have inside of us. We don't even have to light up. It's already a living light, as Emmanuel mentions, right? And we diminish ourselves. We put the bushel on top of it, right? Because we're afraid, because we are whatever. Why do we hide others? Why do we steal that beautiful thunder, right? That lights everything up of others? Why do we insist to do so? Guilt, maybe, because we cannot do the same. And it's okay not to be the same, right? Or perhaps it's just plain envy, right? Oh no, if I cannot do it, guess what? Nobody will do it, right? And I often mention here that there are many things that I have come across at work where I had my ways to do it, my ways to explain, and then I pass the task to another individual. Sometimes very reluctant because we sometimes think that we can do it all, right? But we do it because it's supposed to be that way. And you see the person accomplishing the same task with much less time in a much more effective way. And if they have to explain to another person, they do it much better than I did. And I'm like, wait a minute, why didn't I think of that before? Right? And what are we supposed to do? Exalt that individual. When I say the individual, it's because of that discovery that I made. And look, so and so did it much better than I did. Praise the work, right? Keep going, right? What do we tend to do? We tend to hide that individual. We see this in the academia. We see this at work as well. We see this with different bosses that do not like to let others shine, right? It's normal. It's life nowadays. It's humanity nowadays. But let us not be these individuals, right? Why do we abuse the light of others? Why can we not light our own light? Why not take the initiative to say, if so and so can do it, I can do it. Much like, as I mentioned before, if I can do it, someone else can do it as well. We can do the opposite, right? If so and so person learned this language or can do something that perhaps a skill that I don't have, maybe I won't be the same. It's not going to be a a LED light, right? But it will be a fluorescent light, burning a little bit more fuel, but I'll get there. And perhaps one day I will be the light, right? That I can use towards others. And it goes on. And one thing that I'd like to finalize is this idea of stealing the light. It's very important that we also remind ourselves that we cannot give what we don't have, right? And sometimes we tend to, it's the other issues of life that we have within us that we think that I have already accomplished this, I have done this. There are limitations here, obviously. There are certain exclusions here where we can put it aside and say, look, okay, let's let the person try. They're not there yet, but in order for that person to be there, we have to take those baby steps. But there are also individuals, I'm talking about individuals, or sometimes ourselves, that we put ourselves somewhere that we don't deserve to be there, right? And then what happens? We fall, right? Because we're not prepared, because we don't know the truth yet, we don't know the basics yet to be someone that we are not, right? Perhaps we try a little bit in our lives, we keep fooling ourselves, and then we see the true face of our issues, and then we let's say we do things that perhaps are not helpful towards others, and for sure ourselves, right? But we do this in thinking that we're much like those or that individual, right? So just something that we cannot shine the light that we don't have, neither to steal the light of others and present as ours, right? I heard a very interesting case this week from Chico Xavier, where he was telling the story. I forget the name of the speaker in Brazil. Anyways, the story goes as it that the a mother in Brazil who had actually requested to go see Chico. I believe they were giving numbers to the mothers who went to the Spiritist Center to have to go and see Chico, right? For the letters that he used to write and everything, from the beyond, from the discarnated sons and daughters. So what happened was that this mother, she had a number and she gave it to another mother, and the number was obviously a earlier number, let's say number 10, and the other friend, her friend, had received the number 50. But she's like, you know what, go, you need more than I do. So what happens is that the someone from the center goes to her house and says, so and so, you need to come to the center because Chico needs to see you. And then she's like, wait a minute, what is this? I gave my number to someone else. She's like, no, you got to come to the center because Chico needs to see you. So the son in the spirit realm gets to be called and gets to be explained. You're going to speak with your mother, not because of you, but because of the light of your mother, because she gave her number, which was an earlier number, to be seen, to someone else. And because of that, she was able to see and receive, to see Chico and receive the message from her son. So it was explained that, look, it's not your merit to the son. It's her merit of being a good Samaritan, saying, here you go, here's the number. You need a little bit more than I do. And she was called to see Chico before. The light was not his. It was hers. Right? So let us think about these things, that we cannot shine the light that we don't have yet. So when we hear, I know this is a little bit off there and on top, but when we hear Christ saying to us, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. And no one lights a lamp and hides it in a clay jar or puts it under a bed or bushel, whatever we want to. Did Jesus tell us everything? Do you believe that Jesus told us everything? He told us enough, but not everything. Right? Think about it. We're talking about a spirit that is way more evolved than we are. And he's telling us that we're the light. Don't hide it, right? But he himself, and this is one of the questionings of speaking parables, right? That we also learn from chapter 24 of the Gospel according to Spiritism. And here we'll see that Jesus acted toward the people as one does toward children, whose ideas are not yet developed. In this way, he points out the true meaning of the maxim: one must not put a lamp under a bushel, but upon a stand, so that all who enter may see. This does not mean, however, that one should inappropriately review everything. Every teaching must be proportional to the intelligence of those to whom it is directed, since there are persons whom a radiant light would blind without enlightenment. If we were to go back to the picture, if we were to explain this, if Jesus were to explain this today, it wouldn't be the same way, obviously, right? But Jesus used of certain explanations to the culture of the time, to the people of its time, right? So it had to be in doses, right? It had to be develop into stories that people of its time could assimilate. The issue is that Leo, when studies these parables, right, I'm still puzzled because it can be confusing. It can be confusing for us. So imagine if with the vocabulary that was of its time to explain everything, it would be almost impossible. right? Because language is dynamic, it changes all the time. Our English today is way more advanced than 1,000 years ago, right? Imagine the other language, because English is way more developed than other languages, especially the languages of its time as well. In this case, I believe it was Aramaic, right? But I wanted to make a point, because this is also something that we study under the gospel according to Spiritism, that speaking in parables has nothing to do of hiding its essence, his essence, right? Of hiding the knowledge that he had, because he had to speak with those people at that time in such a way that they would understand. And it was still hard for them to understand. Imagine if he was straight to the point. You will reincarnate next reincarnation if you do this and this and that. Imagine talking about reincarnation, right? What did he tell? Now I forget. When he was talking about reincarnation to the doctor of the law, Nicodemus. Thank you so much. What did he tell Nicodemus? Did he say, you will reincarnate again and again and again? No. One must be born of what? Water, right? For them, it was like, oh my gosh, what is he talking about? And then we study, and then we hear 2,000 years later, with the light of Spiritism, telling us that why, as an answer to why having the spirits taught from the earliest times what they are teaching today. Why didn't Spiritism come in an early age and explain things a little bit faster? Or with Jesus, you do not teach to children what you teach to adults. You do not give to newborns food that they cannot eat. Each thing has its own time. The spirits have taught many things that humans have not understood or have distorted, but which they are now able to understand. Through their teaching, even though incomplete, they prepare the soil to receive the seed, which is now about to bear fruit. Very logical, extremely logical. But I want to point out to one thing, and please hold this thought with me, okay? That we have not understood or have distorted. So it means that we have received before. We have received before. Either we did not understand, or we took that information and we made it a completely mess, right? A complete mess. Isn't that what we did and we still do with the teachings of the gospel? Isn't that what we still do with the Spiritist teachings and many other teachings as well? Think about it. Are we putting this light, right, in terms of a book, right, on top for everybody, or putting under a bushel when we do such a thing? But there is more to this. So hold this thought and we'll go ahead and connect with the next slide. Another question that is worth to bring as well. Why hasn't the truth always been within reach of everyone? Each thing must come in its own time. Truth is like light. We must accustom ourselves to it little by little. Otherwise, it dazzles us. I'll give you an example, a very interesting example. In many situations that I have partaken in a mediumistic meeting, it's very hard for the person who is conducting the meeting and speaking with the spirit to tell the spirit, you no longer have a physical body. It's the light, isn't it? It's like, okay, dear friend, you're not living in the physical body anymore. But would you like to hear such a thing? If we were on the other side, right, and we are lost, perturbed, whatever we want to look at it, whichever way we want to think about it, would you like to hear such a thing? No. So the individual has to kindly remind of the spirit, or look where you are right now. Do you see any of your family members? Do you see people that you know, quote unquote, or not? Look at the environment. Is it different from where you used to live or where you used to work? Because sometimes the individual could be in the hospital, and the thoughts and the what they remember mainly is perhaps those final moments that was very shocking to them, if it was an accident or not, right? So the light is what? It is, in fact, to tell that individual that you're no longer in the physical body. But is that prudent? Is that lighting up a little lamp that is that little light, or really brighten that individual with a huge LED light, right? That is very warm as well. Well, LEDs are not warm, but you get the point, right? It creates that heat, creates that attraction that is not necessary at that point. So we have to go slow. And it's the same thing in our lives, right? That we receive it little by little, little by little, little by little, much like we feed our children what they can perceive. You don't go from from basic math, 1 plus 1, to trigonometry. No, right? You have to take several classes to get to that point. If you want to be a mathematician, you will see that trigonometry will be all the way towards the end, right? And then some other types of maps as well. But that's the point, that things happens little by little. And a final point on this part of it here is that it depends on us. We cannot shine an LED light before we shine the little lamp light. It takes time. It takes a lot of dedication for us to move on from the little light to become a well shining sun on the life of others. It takes a lot of a study. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of attraction as well, right? And to make a final point, when we hear the the master saying that it will be given more to those who already have, right? And it will be taken from those who does not have or think that they have, right? What kind of message is there? It's kind of scary if we think about it, right? So for someone who already has, they will be given more, and for those who do not have, they will be taken from them, right? Let's think about this. Do humans draw from within themselves the power to progress, or is progress nothing more than the result of education? And the spirits actually explains to us they advance naturally by themselves. Not all progress at the same time or in the same manner. However, it is through social contact that the most advanced help others, the most advanced helping others to progress. The point that I want to bring here, folks, is that the more we use this light, the more we sacrifice the burning fuel of our lives, whatever that may be. Because for each one of us, we will use our own fuel, right? Some of us, not making a plug-in here, runs on dunking. But not everybody likes coffee. People run on something else, right? But we have to think that the more we do, the more we will receive. The less we do, the more will be taken from us. Because if we want to be patient and we don't want to put the effort to be patient, if we don't want to receive the opportunities to be patient, guess what? Those opportunities they're not going to knock on our doors anymore. It will be taken from us. For those of us who are practicing more and more and more, the more we will receive. It's like giving. Who is the best individuals to give work when you are work? To share your work when you're work? Those who were very hard workers. Number one, they don't have time to complain, right? Number two, that individual just wants to get the job done, right? We have seen those individuals at work. There's always one or two that they're very focused, and a plethora of individuals that are like, oh no, I don't think I can take this other task. This is too hard, right? So it's the same thing with us. And we may feel exhausted. We may feel tired. It's okay. We may complain, right? There are days that we were like, I can't take it anymore, right? But then we think about it. What's the purpose? At the end of the day, what is the purpose? Emmanuel comes to us towards the end of his message of the same book, same chapter that I mentioned earlier. He says, let us put our potential at the disposal of our neighbor. No one should keep the advantages of the earthly experience solely to him or herself. Each spirit temporarily incarnate in the human sphere enjoys broad prerogatives regarding spreading the good. If he or she in, perseveres in the practice of universal love. Transform your energies into redemptive goodness and understanding towards everyone, spending the oil of your goodwill in selflessness and sacrifice, and your life in Christ will really start to shine. Please read the chapter. If anything, acquire the book. It's an amazing book as well. But we need to think about purpose, right? We need to think about purpose. What was said towards the end of, I can put it back up. I'd like to actually see if whoever remembers. In Matthew, towards the end of the "You are the light." What was the? What did Jesus tell us? Do you guys remember? Okay. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So we have our own purpose, right? Is to shine our light, to do our part, because it has been given to me, so I need to utilize it. And it's been given to me every single second, because the view of the physical body, and I'm being a little bit materialistic here, not even exploring the idea that we are eternal, talking about the now in the physical body, we're burning fuel. And this fuel is coming from somewhere, because I don't think anybody can say, materialize a physical body here, right? It takes time. It takes a lot of work, right? We are co-creators. Let's give ourselves that, because it's huge, right? Our parents, right? So we have a purpose to bring light from the top, not to hide it. But there is an even greater purpose of all this. As I am shining my light, we are glorifying God, right? And that is why it's extremely important for us to be grateful for our parents before we can even think about this, right? For us to say, thank you, dear father, dear mother, for allowing me to be here, right? And that's another teaching as well, that it always touches my heart, because I'm also a father as well. And it's important for us to think that they did what they could. They shine their light upon us, right? And if we have this inside of us, at least recognize this point, guess what? We'll be better off doing this right here, which is to glorify our dear Creator. So, as we were saying at the end, when we look at the, oh gosh, sorry about that. Is it the end? No, almost. 1 second. Let's see here. So when we brought the picture again towards the end, for us to look at the purpose of this light. It serves no purpose whatsoever under the bushel. Zero. Except the one that we explored, which I think is just Leo exploring, that they had to maintain the light going, right? So, so the wind wouldn't blow, they would keep it there temporarily. But the purpose of it is what? To light up the room, right? To bring light to the room. And that is why we have light over our heads, not on our feet. That is why our parents are telling us still within ourselves, right? Do this way, do that way, be a responsible person. That is why society as well, thank God, with the set of laws that we have, is pushing us to our limits. So we don't go crazy in society and do crazy things, right? Thank God for the difficult moments that we have when we have to deal with time. I have to be at a certain place at this time. I have to go to bed at this time. We are slaves of time. But thank God for time. Thank God for the issues that we have that in our lives that tells us to stop and think, and it doesn't allow us to go do whatever we want to do in our lives, because perhaps the things that we want to do, number one, is very mundane, but it wouldn't help us to be a light for someone else. All of these things, so that one day we can receive excuse me, so that one day we can receive and also give in abundance, right? As in this picture here, we see a lot of information in abundance. We have three parables, just like, if we were to read the whole Bible at once, perhaps we would get lost. If we were to read all the books at once, we would get lost. What's the purpose? What are we studying? What are we trying to accomplish? Let us ask ourselves, because sometimes we want to do many, many, many things. We want to be different types of lights, and we forget to light up when we are most needed. Perhaps as a father, perhaps as a partner, a co-worker, right? At the Spirit's center, because we're worried about someone else's light. So as an ideal that we keep here at the SSB, let us enlighten our lives together. Let us bring light to one another together. If I cannot help, I'm going to call someone, let that person shine and do its work, because I cannot do it yet. And let's recognize that and perhaps aim to be that type of light, right? But one thing that we cannot forget, that we are light, that we have inside of us the examples to give, right? Joanna de Angelis have said this to us several times here at the SSB when we read it. We are an example for someone in the universe, right? Interesting. I actually came across something important at work. One of my managers actually, in one of those talks that sometimes we talk to young clients, right? She actually talked to this individual, to say, look, because they were opening an account for themselves. This young person was opening an account with his mother, and the manager actually said, well, look, make sure you're staying in school, you do this and do that, all that normal talk that usually us parents we like to do. And so it happened that the young man actually followed through her advices. Today, that individual actually has a full scholarship because what she said a couple of years ago. Didn't think nothing was going to happen. At the time, it was like, okay, went through one year, come out of the other, right? And for someone to have a full scholarship, it's amazing, right? And we were talking about this, at work, and I was like, wow, man, it's amazing. We never know that when we're planting the seed, something like this is going to sprout. The tree will sprout. That when we take that little lamp that we think, okay, it's just something that is going to be there. No, it's going to light up. So let us be that light. Let us feel good about ourselves. Finally, I'll give the example of this man over here, Benjamin Franklin, right? On the biographies that we read, and there are also movies as well that shows him being a very laborious person. He would actually walk on the street showing that he was working, right? As an example to society when he was in Philadelphia, right? Showing what he could do so others could do the same. Is that boasting about himself, showing up? No, because it was a good example. He wasn't taking anything from anybody. He was actually just literally showing what he was doing on a normal day, right? But he made sure that was actually something to show to society, to bring that light up. And one of if we go back to the 13 virtues of Benjamin Franklin, one is to be what? A laborious person, a hard worker, right? Because he believed in hard work. right? So at this point, I would like to stop right here. Hopefully, we have some a better understanding of what um, this parable is and how we can hopefully change our lives as well, right? And illuminate the lives of others as well. And let's not forget the 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 aim is not only ourselves here, but also show to one another that God created us all, and God is for all of us. We were studying this past Thursday about the new generation on the Genesis, right? And one of the things that Kardec is mentioning is how we one day will get to see one another as brothers and sisters under the same God. It feels pretty far, but we can bring it closer if we work harder, right? So we would like to thank you and open up for questions or comments that you may have. I'll get out of here so we can. Oh no, wrong one. Do we have any comments online or questions? Daniel says, "Thank you, Leo, for the presentation. My question is related to those that we can see have a lot to give. No thanks. I.e., knowledge, skills, and etc., but do not think they are capable of. What would you say about it?" First of all, the first thing that I would like to say is the respect, right? We have to respect everyone's position in life, and and I'm saying this because I'm here in the front because I rebel about those, and I'm saying I'm being vulnerable now, people. Okay, I rebel about those the individuals internally. Please don't take me wrong. Internally, about the individuals that have a potential and do not see its own potential, and I do that to myself as well. It's like me sabotaging my own self, right? And that's exactly what we're doing. We're sabotaging ourselves. We see the potential. We see that there is a huge future ahead of the individual, right? And I'm not talking about, say, a huge future in terms of age or years, no, but what can be accomplished with that energy, right? And then number one, being respectful, and then say it. I think we ought to say something, and we can, and with the wisdom that we have developed thus far, we can actually tell the individual, look, here are the consequences if we stay the same way, right? And here are the consequences if we take a different step with the knowledge that you have, with the experience that you have, right? And it's the same thing we go through at work with, when we are talking to our bosses. Sometimes, we don't see it, but somebody else sees on us, right? Or when we are trying to help someone, apply for the job, do that, go ahead, right? Go to school, right? You have the skills available to do so, but we sabotage ourselves. I think that if we were to just respect and not say anything, then we're not moving, then we're not bringing the light, right, on top of that person. And finally, um, what I would say is to definitely pray upon that individual. So those three elements, I think hopefully it will help. But rest assured that sometimes when I see certain things happening, it's like, wait a minute, we have so much potential that we could develop with those skills, and it doesn't happen, right? But let us utilize our mentors, how our mentors think and act over us. Think about us and act over us as well. They give their space, give the time. Because one thing is this: you can light up our own light, but we can never light up the light of someone else. It's on them. And that, as much as it is hard for all of us, especially as parents, right? It's something that has to happen within that individual, right? Hopefully it helps, Daniel. And Anyone else before we go to the next question has a question, comment? No. I think Yasko has. Did I hear? Did I see something? Yasko, hi Yasko. How about the lamp being the spirit and the bushel the physical body, which is too significant and may prevent the spirit to shine and to fulfill its true progress? What do you think? It is true. It is true that we utilize the physical body as an excuse, right? But let us think about the preparation that we do before we reincarnate, right? That doesn't mean, obviously, I get it, that it has to be as we quote unquote prepare ourselves, right, to reincarnate. But I am very, let's say, I don't want to say 100% sure that each one of us, obviously, that we go through our, difficulties in the physical body, but we have to think that the the it becomes an excuse, right? It becomes a, oh, this is so hard. It is hard. I'm not saying that it's not hard. It's very difficult for us to accomplish and to do everything. Plus, right? We promote ourselves. We propose to ourselves before we're reincarnated, but it can be hard. And I say this also with my limitations, with respect as well. But one thing is for sure, we see sometimes people with physical limitations, right? We see individuals that they have very little resource, much less resources that we have, and they accomplish great things, right? And they accomplish things that perhaps I wouldn't think to accomplish in this lifetime, right? And yes, the physical body was an impediment. The physical body was a very difficult moment. The physical life of that individual was very difficult, but they accomplished things that perhaps I wouldn't be able to accomplish. So I hope that helps as well, Yasko, in this idea of utilizing that as an excuse. Go ahead. Ebony Paris. Hello, Miss Paris. Dear Leo, do you agree that sometimes it takes courage to shine our light in the midst of the negative reactions received from those threatened by the light? Yes. Wow. What a great question. I would say, what a great statement. And yes, we are afraid of shining our own light. Yes. We are, that the fear of not only the fear, but also I like to say that sometimes we think that we are showing up, right? Whereas sometimes we truly show up in a negative way by showing our properties, right? It's very easy for us to go and say, I have the best car, or I have this or that title. But when we are called to truly show the true light, we forget, right? We're like, no, leave it alone. I don't want to put myself out there, right? And culturally, I like to say, and again, I'm putting myself as an example. Culturally, I have to say that Latin American individuals living in other countries, right? We have that. We have an accent speaking the language, right? We're like, if I go and say it, people may not take me seriously, right? We have we diminish ourselves in a way that we are lesser than, right? And yes, not better than anybody else, but there are certain things that, yes, as she mentioned, we have to say, this is it, I accomplished. Why can't I show to others that is doable? If anything, let us think about that. Let us think about the fact that I accomplished, and if I can do it, you can do it also. It may not be the same thing, it may not be the same way, the outcomes will be completely different, but it was done. It's possible, right? It's when we look at an individual and we say, this is an individual that everything went right for that person. Did it? Did it really? We don't count the struggles, we don't count the sacrifices, we don't count what the person is going through right now. perhaps having a bad health, of really sacrifice its own time, its own life to be that person today, right? To be the light for others, right? To have a good family, to simply be an individual who holds a job, right? And have a family and is a light for someone. Because the worst thing that we can do with this message is to think that this light is something great, right? As Chico Xavier tells us, we're not being asked to climb Mount Everest. No, it's to climb our 1, 2, 3 steps. Great, right? Because in the past, perhaps we couldn't even hold that 1, 2, 3 steps. We would go down steps, right? Especially when we do attacking others as well, that it's someone else's problem. So if we like light up our light to say, enough is enough, I'm going to do my part, right? And show its light, despite all the negativity, all the negative things that we see that were presented, is great. And that is true value, right? When we are in the middle of the issues that we're going through, the turmoils that we're going through lives, and you hold your thoughts. It's beautiful when we're having that family, let's call discussion, not argument, right? That heated discussion, between family members, and then somebody walks in the room and everything stops. We probably have seen those moments in our lives, right? Usually it's an elderly individual that through wisdom, through patience, through sacrifice, through love, right? Everybody's so afraid to continue the conversation that, oh gosh, what have I done, right? We had those examples in life, and it's beautiful. But to achieve that position, it took a lot of work, right? So hopefully, well, I like to say thank you for making this comment and this question, and hopefully that added a little bit to it as well. Agnes, please.
I just want to say, like, one thing that came to mind about, like, why not keep the light under the bushel, like it says, to put on top of the table so the ones who walk in the room will see it. And with the question from Ebony, this part about being afraid of, like, our light shining too bright, right? What the response will be. So to my mind came that not to put under the bushel and put on the top for the ones who come in the room to see, meaning the ones that are going to come closer to you will see, right? So like if you think of the candle in the middle of a dark room, if you get closer to the candle, you can see clearly, you can see more. If you're right on the corner of the room, you're seeing just a little bit. So it's almost like that thought of, you don't know who is watching you. You don't know who is taking you as an example, who is observing you, who is taking you as an inspiration. So the part of thinking like you're going to hide and show when you think you can show, you might be hiding this wisdom, this information, or this inspiration from somebody that's just watching you when you are not paying attention, when you're not noticing. So the part of like just keep it out, keep it shining, do your thing, and the ones that will need that inspiration will take notice. That's what I thought.
Thank you. No, thank you. And it reminds me of two things that I didn't mention here. If you have a dark room, it's beautiful to have fluorescent light, right? It's going to light up, right? But if you have a little lamp, it will do the work. It will shine as bright as that lamp, and it will do the work. We will accommodate ourselves, our eyes, or what we have to do. If we had a little lamp here to conduct this meeting, we would be doing so, right? What I'm trying to say, that little lamp, when it's too extremely dark, my gosh, will do wonders, right? Yes, it's beautiful to have LED lights. It's beautiful to have the lights that we have, but that little light will do the work, right? If we were to turn off the lights, the light that is being projected on the screen right now would do wonders, right? One thing for sure, we were not going to trip on anything that that is in the room, because we have some light, and that light will do wonders. The second thing that I would like to say is something that I heard some time ago, that a task was presented to two individuals, right? To fill an empty room. Simply, fill an empty room. Presented to two individuals, and they're like, you can fill this room with whatever you want. First person went there and filled up the room with hay. Why? It's easy, right? It's something small, and you can pack a lot of hay inside the room, right? And the other person simply just goes in there with a little lamp and fills the room with light. Where one was thinking about filling up with things, right? The other one very simply said, no, let me bring light because it's dark. There's no light inside of this, right? And he could see the actual space that he had in front of him. He could do other things with the room as well. Just for us to think about how small sometimes we think that our light can be, but we never know, as she mentioned, what that will do for others and how long that light will last to the life of others as well, because they have to shine their own, right? They have to shine their own. So because of time, we would like to stop over here and to give thanks to those who were connected with us online, those who will connect in the future as well. Thank for your participation, and let us not forget that we are light. Thank you.